Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm here to talk about Mother Tongue by Sara Novic. This is a memoir, and Sara Novic is probably best well known for her novel True Biz, which I read when it originally came out. Absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved her debut novel, Girl at War, as well. And so when I saw that she had a memoir coming out, I had this very high on my priority list for the year. Sara Novic is deaf, which I didn't know about until I read the book True Biz and saw that she was writing about the deaf experience based on some of her own experiences as well as the people that she met and knew and things along those lines. And so, like I said, this is a memoir talking about her experiences growing up hard of hearing and deaf, but it's also about her figuring out her life, getting married, becoming a mother. She has two children, one of which she birthed herself, and then one that is adopted, and the adopted son is also deaf as well. So yeah, this is just a really great memoir, spoilers, but I love this book so much. I think that Sara Novic's a fantastic writer, first of all, so that's part of the reason. But I think just also her experiences are very honest and somewhat unique. Like I said, she's deaf. She was diagnosed, I think, when she was in either middle school or high school. She talks about it a little bit here. It's like a murky timeline because she wasn't born deaf. And so the sort of process of a combination of her overcompensating and things along those lines when she was in middle school and started to have difficulties hearing, and combined with people's biases when it comes to being deaf, led to her not getting, I think, officially really treated until it feels like college, because through junior high and high school she would either push through or if she had issues, her hearing was kind of sporadic, so sometimes she could pass certain tests and sometimes she couldn't and things along those lines. So it was never consistent enough that the doctors could really say anything for sure. And also just again, the biases towards people who are becoming deaf and when is enough evidence enough, things along those lines. She also talks about the fact that she had heart issues growing up, so a lot of times that would take precedence over anything other sort of health or medical issues that she might have going on, for I think somewhat obvious reasons. But yeah, that sort of took precedence, and so it also sort of impacted the timeline in which she actually started to receive help. And that whole experience with her having a heart condition also sort of impacted her ability to trust the medical system in various ways, to be able to trust and believe doctors and believe that doctors had her best interest in heart and were actually listening to her. She talks about a lot of different experiences that she has where different teachers or administrators or doctors or medical professionals would have certain thoughts or would express certain things to her about her deafness and about her being a deaf person. I'm sure that anyone who has any sort of disability knows what that experience is like, because I feel that's just true overall, especially if you have a non-visible disability. People assume a lot of things, and she talks about her experiences with that and her frustrations growing up with those things. She talks about her experiences with getting the help that she needs. She talks about being able to find her community. Being deaf meant that she started to lose basically her friendships and relationships that she had prior to fully embracing the fact that she was deaf, because she would always just push through and work it out with people who had hearing. And once she stopped doing that, a lot of her friends sort of disappeared from her life. And it wasn't until she found sort of a community of deaf people around her age that she started to feel more comfortable in her own skin and with her deafness and using ASL and things like that. And yeah, there's so much that's going on in this memoir, and it's not just a memoir. One of the things I really like about, and I shouldn't say just a memoir, but one of the things I like about this book is that Sara Novic has done a lot of research into sort of the history of deafness to varying degrees. She talks about ASL and how it's evolved over time as a language. She talks about the specific community of people at Martha's Vineyard who a higher percentage of them were deaf, and so basically everyone on the island, I think it was at Martha's Vineyard, basically spoke ASL whether they were hard of hearing or not, just because so many people in the community were deaf. She talks about various medical procedures. She talks about just in general the changes in perception when it comes to things like being deaf, but it's also about her being a queer individual and how there's like an overlap between how disabled people as well as queer people are treated. And she also talks about sort of like the separation of the two, how like queer people have certain thoughts and feelings and biases towards disabled people and vice versa. She talks about her experiences being a mother, and specifically like her experiences being deaf and like being pregnant, and how she was like nervous about how she was treated and how she constantly had like people around who could advocate for her, who could like make sure that she had the care that she needed, that she had the help and translators that she needed, things along those lines. And she talks a lot about her experiences with adoption. Her husband was adopted as a kid and had like nothing but like great things to say about his experiences, or not nothing but great things to say, but overall a positive experience with the fact that he was adopted. And so he always expressed the desire to adopt himself, and Sara Novic was always a little bit hesitant about it, because you also hear the horror stories about adoption, or at least I have as well, where like children are ripped out of homes unwillingly. Like a lot of adoption cases, people are adopted from other countries when they still have a living parent or other relatives that they could have been with, things along those lines. And so like Sara Novic was feeling like very hesitant and very cautious about adoption, but then she came across the child that would eventually become her son and saw that he was deaf and realized like, oh, there was also another need she could potentially fulfill as an adoptive mother, where she could help someone who was also deaf like find community and like the sort of gift that it is to be a deaf child to a deaf parent, because they like understand, you know, that like community is sort of built in a way that like someone who's like of the same race can understand certain things, or from the same country as you can understand certain things. Like those sort of commonalities are already built in there. And so she talks about her like experiences with adoption, and just even like the harrowing sort of process that they had to go through in order to do the adoption. Part of it was impacted by the fact that COVID happened, and so there were obviously a lot of like stricter guidelines and lockdowns and things along those lines that changed a lot of the processes. But yeah, as someone who is currently a mother who has considered adoption and has like some of those reservations as well, I like really appreciated this memoir for going into such details about so many things when regards to being a mom and adoption. Even if I am not like deaf necessarily, I feel like there are certain things in here that are very relatable in that sense. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed my experience with this memoir. It's like less than 300 pages, so it's not a very long book, but I feel like Sara Novic covers a lot in this short amount of pages, and it's pretty impressive like how much she does with this memoir. It's one of those books that I feel like if you're someone who enjoys memoirs, like you should definitely pick this one up. If you picked up her previous book, True Biz, I feel like this one like goes along with that one so well. And yeah, this is definitely like a very high contender for one of my favorite books of the year so far. No questions asked. So yeah, those are my quick thoughts on Mother Tongue. There's so much I feel like I could have talked about in regards to that book, but I didn't want to like talk about everything and give everything away. I kind of want you guys to experience that book for yourselves. But it's definitely a book that I feel like I'm going to be heavily pushing on people now that I've finished it. So yeah, let me know down in the comments below if you've read this book and what your thoughts were on it, or if you have any questions, feel free to leave that down in the comment section as well. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.